Welcome, everybody, to episode 8 of the Safehouse Podcast. Today we are live in the brand new studio. We teased last week with the thing that we are going to be in a new space. We're going to be doing some stuff that's a little different. So this is a trial run of a live stream, so hopefully it works and everybody's feeling good, feeling strong. In the studio with me today is Brandon, engineer and producer. What's going on, man? How are you?
Not too bad. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. It's good to see you. We're excited.
Absolutely.
If you're joining us, if you were on the first little attempt about 5 minutes ago, you saw that it like went and then it kind of stopped and then we're back into it. So as you can see, sitting to my right, it's not my dad. It's not Pastor Bob, the founder and executive director of Safehouse. He is traveling, but he sends his hellos to everybody. This is actually my friend, Tre Code.
What's up?
We are excited that you join us. How are you, man?
I'm good.
Good. It's obvious in the last 2 episodes of the podcast, one of the things that we did a little buffer before the one two weeks ago, where we spoke a little bit to the issue that was going on with the George Floyd situation and the senseless murder at the hands of the Minneapolis police officer. Since then, there's been so many things happen, and one of the things that I wanted to do was, and I said this in that original buffer, that little thing that we did at the beginning of 2 episodes ago, was that we just need to talk about it more. We have to have more conversations about this. And so I started reaching out to people, and it was funny because Tre, we talked about this on the phone. When I talked on the phone, I thought, I can't imagine how much your phone might be ringing right now from like random white people that are probably calling and just either saying like, I'm with you, or how can we help, or whatever it's going to be. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit and how it's sad. And I admit this too. It's sad that it takes something like this for me to be more vocal. But I'm late to this, obviously, because this is something that's been going on forever.
It's never too late, though.
Right. But yeah, we're going to have conversations and we're going to work on it. So, as we get into that, we got some good stuff. We've bounced back and forth. If you follow me on social media, Tre sent me a message. It was about a week ago, a little less than a week ago. It was Friday, I think. Yeah. And what I'm doing personally is I'm giving away my social media to the voices of my Black brothers and sisters for a while, and just asking them to share stories or share like their heart or share something just to elevate the voices. Because what I'm trying to do is be quiet without being silent, and listen more, and have more open conversations. Because I just think that we jump in a little too quick with some ways to solve this.
Oh yeah.
When it's not, obviously we don't know, like, because if that were true, it would be solved. It's more than just let's just do this. So we're going to get into that. But before we do, I want everybody that's listening to get to know you a little bit. We met because you rented Refuge for, I think it was like an album release party or something like that. What was the first time?
I think the very first time, was we did a listening party.
Okay.
And that was back when I don't do too much music anymore, but I was doing a lot of Christian hip hop music back then. And, so we were doing shows and we had music recorded, and we needed an awesome place, a dope place to host and also perform. And I'm not sure how I even heard about the Refuge. I don't remember. It's been so long.
I don't remember how you heard about it either, but you called me up.
Yeah, when we walked in there, man, I was just instantly sold. And then I met you and instantly sold again. You know what I mean? So
yeah, same from my angle, because I met you. Because there's been times before where like people have said, and this we can dive right into this. I've had people before that have said, we want to have an album release party or a listening party or something at Refuge. And like my immediate response is like, oh my gosh, like what kind of music, what kind of crowd is this going to, because we've had situations where people have come into Refuge for things like that, and it was a mess. I mean, it was terrible because they just didn't care. And then you said, well, it's like Kingdom Minded, it's like Christian hip hop and all this kind of, I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. I can get on board with that. Yeah. And then I met you and I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I'm super excited about it. But something ironic happened too, is you came in one time and looked at the space, and we had partnered with a church, and I felt so bad about this. I don't even know if you remember, but like that church partnership ended, and they owned the speakers.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I remember.
And so you walked in and you're like, "Where's the speakers?" And I went,
that wasn't the first time.
Was that the second time?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Because I rented from you. I can't even remember how many times.
Okay.
I think it was the second time.
I felt so bad. We were like,
because I did my daughter's birthday there as well.
Yes. So you've been around for a while.
Yeah, for a little bit,
man. And then it's funny too, because we had a conversation at a Panera a while ago. I mean, that's been a long time ago too.
Yeah.
And we actually talked about it where I said, I really want to get into podcasting and I'd love to have conversations.
The same thing was on my mind.
Yeah. And so here we are.
Neither one of us was into it.
Yeah.
Yet,
like I listened, but I didn't I'd worked with a church before we did one, but I never just did it. And so now here we are.
God's timing.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we're 8 episodes in, first one that's live. We're excited about it. So you are married, yes?
Correct.
Tell everybody a little bit about yourself. You have you say you have a daughter. How old?
Yeah. So I'm married. We've been married for 6 years now.
I'm going on 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going on 6 years come July.
Okay.
Shout out to my beautiful wife.
Hello.
Tre Code. And we have a 3-year-old daughter currently, and we also have a son on the way.
Awesome.
My legacy.
Congratulations.
You know?
Yeah.
I was super happy when we had my daughter.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not going to say I'm more happy now that I'm having a son, but it's like,
there's something special about a man having a boy.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I have a son and 2 daughters in that order. Son is oldest and then 2 daughters, 7, 5. And then my youngest just turned 2. And I love being a father of daughters without a doubt.
Oh yeah.
But there's something special.
Girl dad.
Yeah. I used to use my daughter's baby dolls to practice ponytails, so I was ready for my daughter when her hair grew in.
I need to learn that trick.
All of my kids were born. Well, the third one was born with a ton of hair, but the other 2 were born bald. Like forever, they were bald. So, but yeah, congrats, man. I'm excited for it. I saw the gender reveal on Facebook.
Yeah, I don't think it showed everything. I literally went nuts. When I saw that blue smoke, it was just like, it was a wrap for me. You could take me now.
Yeah.
I'm good.
I'm good. Just wait. It only gets better. It only gets better. Yeah. Good for you. We were going to do a gender reveal for my third, because we wanted to know ahead of time with my son and my daughter, the first 2. But then we were going to do a gender reveal for my third. But then when we went to the doctor to get the envelope or whatever that had the gender in it, they said there was an abnormality with the blood work. And it sent us down the super long path of like the potential for our third child to be born with a disability.
Okay.
And so like the gender reveal got put on the back burner. We're like, we don't care about that right now. Like they said, based on this blood work, like, we know that you don't want to know, but like, we need to talk to you about this blood work.
Right.
And it's called Turner's syndrome. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. No. But the way the blood work came back is that it's absolutely a female. And we have to tell you that. I know you don't want to know, but like, you have to know what the blood work is. So we have to walk through it. So we found out, even though we didn't want to know, but we had to know, because now we had to do all this like high risk stuff. It was a nightmare. You know, the way God does it though, is that she was born and nothing. I mean, there was no issues at all. Yeah. She was totally fine. I mean, even if there wasn't something wrong, it's still God. Like we would have been fine.
Yeah.
But you know, it was a long process.
Wow.
I felt like my wife was pregnant for 3 years at that point.
I can only imagine.
It was a long time.
Yeah.
So, but that's exciting, man. Good for you. So we do want to get into some stuff today, and the topic of the conversation. I mean, if you're listening, if you're watching, if you followed us through the first 8 episodes, you've heard a lot of stories about Safehouse and about what we do and how we got to where we are. But in light of all of the tension and all of the protests and all the conversations that are happening, I thought that it was absolutely, like, without question, a necessity for myself, for Safehouse, for just anyone to just talk, right? To just have conversations. But as I listened more and I focused more on stuff, I realized that it wasn't about talking for me or as any white person. It's about listening. And so I immediately reached out to some people that I know, not just like, because this is one thing I told you, is that I don't want to be like, hey, there's black white stuff going on. Let me get a hold of black people I know. But I also wanted to get a hold of people that have literally, this is their life. Like, this is what they experience. This is what they go through. These are the stories that they know. Because I knew that as a white person, if we don't have the humility to just stop, right, and listen, then we are not going to ever get enough authority from learning, so that way when we do speak, it carries any weight.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
And so, so I want to talk about a couple things, and I got a couple things that I want to share, and then I just want to like, just kind of like turn it over and just like hear your heart, you know? And like, there's a part of me that wants you to say like, hey, white people, this is what you can do. But like, I think that if people are watching this, they're already at least a little engaged, right? Like that's why they're tuning in.
Right.
I don't know that we're going to like blow people's minds with new ideas.
Yeah.
But I think that it's important to listen. And the verse that brings that to my mind is when Jesus showed up late to a funeral for somebody. And what he did when he first got there, it was Lazarus, right? Like he showed up after he was already buried.
Yeah.
And it says that the first thing that he did was that he wept, right? And that he found himself in the middle of this grief. And before he offered any sort of solution, any sort of help, right? He paused, he sat in the grief, and he responded. He like emoted, right? Like what that grief brought up in him. And it was after that he said, now we're going to do something about it.
Yeah.
And I think for me, and I think for a lot of my white brothers and sisters, that this is an opportunity for us to just like, I'm sad and angry, right? About the George Floyd thing and about the Ahmaud Arbery and the Breonna situation and like just all of these terrible stories that you hear. And I'm sad and I'm angry, but like sad has this idea where it's like it happened to somebody else, right? Anger is like it's happening like to me, like it's happening to somebody that I know, right? And so I want to sit in the grief. I want to sit in the moment and feel it, right? Yeah. But in order to do that, we got to listen more, right? So I want to just hear kind of the, like, just kind of take us in what was your first, I don't know, what was your first thought? What was your first experience as you're tracking through this? I mean, you got a girl, you got a boy on the way. Yeah. And you're thinking about what it's like to be a black man in this America, right? What's a day like for you? Like, walk me through it.
Well, I think everything that you said so far is extremely good and extremely helpful. What comes to mind is, as believers, you know, we need to carry these principles of Christ, right? We want to be more Christ-like. So what was Christ-like? You know what I mean? And I'm glad you brought up that story of Jesus weeping, because the first thing he did was feel things. And so he didn't just preach, grieve with those who grieve, mourn with those who mourn, and rejoice with he actually did it, you know? And so he didn't just talk it, he did it. Right. And so I think that's the thing. And somebody said today, I think I was listening to the radio or whatever. I listened to a lot of things. Yeah. And they were saying this is a time of grief. This is a time of weeping, a time of mourning. And that's real. And don't just talk about, you know, oh, I feel you, feel it. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so like, take the time, take the time to watch these conversations, take the time to communicate with one another and feel it together. You know what I mean? That's the first thing. We got to feel it. You got to feel where we're coming from. Right. But I mean, you're asking me to give a day in the life of a young black American.
But like what you said though is like let me, because that seems cliche-ish or whatever and kind of silly, because like you know, I've read interviews and I've seen interviews where it's white people trying to like minimize this, and they'll interview these like black celebrities or these black people that are like opulent, right? Yeah. And then these men will go, I haven't experienced it personally. Yeah. Right. And then these white people will go, see, like it's not that big of an issue. Right. And it's like, that doesn't, I don't connect with that. I can't fathom that, because I've seen it. I've watched it. Right. I have young men that come to Refuge that have said, I get followed around a sporting goods store literally every time I walk in. Yeah. And the reason why is because their skin is black and the people assume that they're going to steal something. Yeah.
You want to know one of the craziest feelings probably that I feel, and this happens often. I mean, often. It's a feeling, say, so for example, you see my truck, I sit pretty high, and say I drive up next to an older white lady, and I look out, you know, how you look out your window and see who's next to you, you know what I mean? And they get a glance and it's like, oh gosh. Yeah. You know what I mean?
They're like,
it's that, but that's not the feeling I'm describing. The feeling I'm describing is how I feel when I see that. Yeah. Because automatically the first thought is, especially being a believer, you don't want to come off intimidating or frighten anyone. You don't want to come off frightening. And so the immediate reaction, which is crazy, I can't explain this, is, oh God, let me, you know, not look that way so I don't scare her.
Right.
How crazy is that? You know, but that's, and then you, of course, you process it a little bit more, and it's like, you know, why should I be worried about, you know, coming off, you know, as scary? But it's the mindset that you have, because you walk in situations like you go to the store and you see the glances and you see the people move across the aisle and you see, you know what I mean, people, if you're sitting at a table, they sit over there, you know what I'm saying? Right. It's the feeling, it's the vibration, if you will. The energy that comes off in those moments. And
the way that I've explained that same thing to people is that I walk into a restaurant or I walk into a grocery store, they look me directly in the eye, they greet me. It's almost like they know if I'm nice to him, right, it's going to benefit me. And then I've heard stories of people who have different skin than me, right? Whether it's light skin or dark skin or Mexican or Spanish or Asian or whatever it is. And we're talking like black and white, but it's just there's this odd idea where it's like somebody else walks in right behind me. Nobody knows anything about them. Yeah. And because of how they look, they're immediately they're treated differently. This person can't give me the same kind of tip as that guy can. Yeah. And what they don't know is that I'm on a budget, right? Like I can, you know what I'm saying? Like he might be able to. Like this is not fair. And I know that just sounds so silly. Of course it's not fair. But you just look at it and you're like, what is it about like what's ingrained in us that creates this? You're driving in your truck, right? There's no reason for you. And I have this like opposite thing where I saw a couple pull up into the gas station the other day and it was a black man and a white woman. Right. And I had the opposite where I actually wanted to go up and like high five them both. Yeah. Right. But then at the same time, it's like, they don't want that either. You know what I mean? Like I wanted to like exaggerate the support. I wanted to be like, I'm with you, right? You know what I mean? Like, but at the same time, like they just want to get gas. Like they don't need, they don't want to be like the puppet in Andy's, anti-racism movie. And so I try to, in my head, I'm like, what do you normally do, Andy? Like you look somebody in the eye and you smile, right? Yeah. So that's what I did. I looked him in the eye and I smiled. And then immediately the thought went through my head is, I hope that these two individuals don't think that I'm thinking something negative, because there's just a part of me that knows that they might be, because they probably deal with it all the time.
Oh yeah. And it's the stigma that is already so just intertwined in our culture. Right. You know, the fear that's portrayed in the media, all types of videos where my generation of people, white kids, will be having conversation with their parents. Yeah. And it's them thugs. And what do you mean them thugs? You don't even know them. You know what I mean? And the behind the scenes conversations that are had and the thoughts that go through your mind when you see a black man robbing somebody and getting arrested, things like that. It's stigmatized in America. Yeah. It's just in the core, very core of it. Yeah. It's in these thoughts, they go by in a split second, you know what I mean? And you don't even have time to think about them and process them because it's just it's ingrained in us. It's just like you touch something hot, you pull your hand back. Yeah. As a natural reaction, there's just such a deep ingraining concept or idea that we're like our differences are more of a problem than they actually misconception.
are. Yeah, right. And so, because that's something, and you even said, and everybody that I've talked to has said the same thing to me. Because when I would call people, I'd be like, this is what I want to do, right? And I'm scared it's going to come off as pandering, right? And my fear was that the misconception was going to offend people, right? And thankfully, everyone that I spoke to was like, I know, first of all, stop. Like, don't apologize anymore. Yeah. Like, I see what you're doing. I'm with you. Understand. Right. I know you. Yeah. And that's what I want to get to here in just a second, because, and I do want to share a quick story just about how, and this is almost like a confession for me too, is that like, I have never even thought of myself as having any sort of racist ideas. Right. But then I've also only recently realized that there's a difference between being racist, being non-racist, and being anti-racist. Right. And so, and we're getting to a point now where anything less than anti-racist is unacceptable.
Completely.
You know what I mean? And when I say getting up to a point, I mean, we're at that point. Like over the last, at least, I don't even know how long, but it's always been bad to not be anti-racist, but it's finally getting into like the normal vernacular now, you know?
Yeah. It's definitely reaching a climax.
And I hope that it doesn't just go in this like wave where it's kind of going back and forth, that we just keep climbing this mountain all together. Because like, I saw this meme, and pictures are worth a lot of words or whatever, but this picture was like, it was a white person that was like at the bottom of this mountain, and it's like, I'm anti-racist, man, this is exhausting. Right. And then it was like, showed their black brother, like 2 steps up, being like, I've been doing this my whole life. It's a long road or whatever. And the imagery was just like, and that's going to be something that white people, I think, have to realize. It's like, you don't just pass a few laws
it's a journey,
and everything. Yeah.
Definitely.
Like,
and even because, like I said, it's so embedded in American history, culture, society, that you have to constantly work these things out. Right. It's the idea and the concept of being renewed in your mind. As believers, we know that concept well. Right. When it comes to our sin nature, when it comes to our humanity, trying to become more Christ-like and become more like Christ. Story.
There's audio coming through here, Brandon. Did you get it? Okay.
Yeah. We understand that concept of being renewed in your mind very well. And so it's the same concept, the same idea. You have to constantly work those things out. You see something about yourself you don't like, or that is ugly, you got to continue to take it to God, continue to have conversations like, I had this thought, or I had this thought process when this happened. Right. And continue just to expose it. Yeah. You can't keep stuff in the dark. Right. And that's
where it grows.
That's how stuff festers and gets nasty. Yeah. Bring it to the light.
Yeah. Light kills evil. Right. And we have to call racism what it is. It's evil. It's sin. There's no God in it. It's completely of the enemy. Period. I mean, there's no like, well, it's just the way that I, like, you don't have an experience what I've experienced. I have so many like older people in my wife's side of the family, and they're like, the idea is like, well, you don't know like what, and I said, I don't care. Like, I don't care. Like that, you can't make it about race when that could have just been a person of poor character. Right. You can't make it about that, because I want to look at the people and be like, we have family members in this house right now that we wouldn't trust to babysit our children, and they're white. Like, you can't make it about the color of somebody's skin just because you want justification on not holding everybody to the same standard. Yeah. And so, and I told my wife, I was like, when we first had kids, we talked about our kids, and one of the stories that I wanted to share just to everybody, and I put it on my website, my personal one. I wrote this piece, and there's a cousin of my wife. She fell in love with and married a black guy, and he's great. I mean, he's awesome. And it's so funny because you sent me that video and I posted it, and you had like a Teamsters shirt on. I don't know if that's for like what you do or if you just had it.
Yeah, but it's my old job.
Okay, it's your old job. She messaged me directly and went, "Oh my gosh, my husband does the same thing, or works for Team or whatever it is."
Yeah, it's a union.
Yeah, and he goes, my dad was a Teamsters member back when he worked at used to make Murphy's Oil Soap, and so he was in the Teamsters union, and which is a whole different conversation. Right. But it was just so ironic. It was like, oh my gosh, there's this immediate connection. And he's employed. He has 3 beautiful babies with this with this girl, my wife's cousin. She's white, he's black. And she has been told you're not allowed back into certain family functions. So she sat in my living room floor with tears in her eyes. And I looked at my wife and I said, one of these days, I'm going to be like the patriot, like the old grandpa, right? Yeah. And I'm going to burn this thing to the ground. I was so frustrated. I was so angry. And I looked at my wife in that moment and I said, if any of our children come home with a boyfriend or girlfriend that's a person of a different color, I'm not asking you, I'm saying to you that we are bringing them into this house. We're putting food on the table. We're welcoming them into our home, right? Like, I don't care what the family says. Yeah. They're going to be watching from the outside then. Because one day I'm going to be that guy that's like, oh, Grandpa Andy doing his thing over there. And it's going to be, hey, everybody who was not allowed before come to like, because we just can't go. And the whole point of this is we can't look at like old white people and go, oh, that's Grandpa Jim over there. That's Uncle Joe. Yeah. That's just how they are. Like, we have to call it out. Like, we have to say, what you're doing is not okay. Yeah. It's not right. And the misconception thing gets on me a little bit because there was a situation, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. And I shared this story with you, and I'll share it for the audience. I worked at Refuge. I had me, and there was one other white guy that worked for me, and then another one that was black. His name was Ryan. Shout out Ryan. Love you, man. And he, I asked him, there was a lot of kids playing basketball, and they were throwing around the N-word, right? And and it wasn't in a derogatory way. It was in the like brotherhood kind of way. Yeah. And I learned a long time ago that like, there's only so much authority I have, even as a person in authority, to speak to that issue, because I'm not going to, that's not my issue. That's not my topic to address. Yeah. Right. At least in an informed way. And any way that I do, it's going to start to feel like I'm coming from you don't want to come off wrong. Right. I'm almost going to be like coming off more oppressing than I should, because I don't want to speak to my definition of the word. I want to meet people where they're at. Right. But being at Refuge, being in this after school setting with a lot of other kids around, I didn't want it being used at Refuge. And so I asked this young black man to go tell those boys, could you tell them not to use the word? And he kind of looked at me, and he's like, you sure you want me to? And I was like, I don't think it's going to sound good coming from me. Right. And he's like, I don't know if it's going to sound good coming from me. Yeah. And I was like, what are you getting at? Like, I didn't get it. And I said, he's like, I'll go do it. But like, just know that I don't know if there's a way to do this right. Right. And I said, okay, I mean, if I need to do it, I'll do it. He's like, nah, let's see how it goes. And so he did it. They finished their game, and a young kid, very strapping, very confident, very like just oozing like pride, right? Walked up to me. He said, can I talk to you? Absolutely, man. What's going on? And he goes, why'd you have the brother come over and tell us not to use that word? And I went, and I froze. I went, I don't know how to respond. Yeah. And the first thing came in my mouth was, I didn't think it would sound good coming from me, right? And like I said on the phone, what he interpreted that as is the white guy, the white boss, the master telling the other black guy to tell other black people what they're allowed to do. Yeah. And that was his interpretation of it. And that I was mortified. He's like, let's go talk in your office. I said, absolutely. Please, let's go talk in my office. And he explained to me, he's like, my grandfather told me that word is ours now and we can use it however we want. And I said, I'm not disagreeing with you.
I think that's a great example of the misconceptions on both sides. Right. I don't think this is a one-sided issue to where all white people are the blame for the way the world is. You know what I mean?
That's interesting.
With that story, I see the obvious misconception on your part and the more subtle misconception on his part, where that was not your intention. Right. But off rip, automatically, our mind's going to go there. Right. And that should not be, but that's also embedded and ingrained in us as well. And so that's something we got to work out. It's two sides to every coin. You know what I mean? It's not all on one side. Yeah. And so with having that relationship, I'm glad that he came and talked to you about it, it's like, hey, it's like, no, this is what I meant. You know what I mean? This is not how I was trying to come off. And that's all it's about. Have conversations and see people as human rather than a skin color. Yeah. You know, and I mean, that sounds so basic, right? But that's what we're dealing with here. And I think, honestly, this is where I come from when it comes to race. And then I'll let you say what you're going to say.
No, you're fine. Go, please.
When it comes to race, the idea of race stems from the same roots of evolution.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. I don't know if you study evolution, the evolutionary theory, and Darwin and things like that. But so the evolutionary theory comes from Darwin, the same guy that I forget the name of the other book he wrote, but he quotes that the Negro or the African, and I think he even quotes and says the Australian. Okay. So I don't know what that's about, but he clumps the African and the Australian together and says that they're a lower class of human race than the white superior race, and we're just a little bit above an ape. Yeah. And so this is Darwin, the same guy that gives you evolution. Right. And so the idea and concept of race comes from that. And when you completely throw out evolution as science, you know, from goo to you, you know what I mean? Yeah. Rather than created by an almighty creator. Right. You have no basis for race. Yeah. We are the human race. Right. We come from two humans. Right. You know what I mean? Who came and had their origin from God directly, created in his image. Right. You know what I mean? And so the whole race, I still cringe. And if you say it, don't think I'm like thinking negatively about you. Right. But I still cringe when people say a person of another race, because I know there's only one. There's one. Yeah. There's only one race. Well, and that goes to the idea that we have different races, and that's where you get racism, when you think a person of a different color is actually a lower class of human than you are. Yeah. Physically, mentally, and this is what Darwin, he said, physically, mentally, everything. You are superior to me, right, as a human being, which is why you're another race. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But if we're all in the same race, and now you just have a matter of skin color. Yeah. You know what I mean? And
just tones.
You have a matter of skin color, and you have a matter of economic situation, maybe. Yeah. In the case of America. Yeah. But that's a whole lot of history that I don't think we're getting into today.
And what I like about this is that, like, this is not a one-stop like conversation we're going to have. Like I want to have those conversations with people and you, and continue to like process through this. Mm-hmm. And I want to challenge people that are listening to this. Like, I say people of a different race. Like, I say that, and I say that in a way where it's like, everybody's welcome. Like, we're going to draw a big circle and everybody's in it. Yeah. But like, that phrasing implies that there's like a lack of unity, right? Yeah. It's almost like I'm creating this idea of differences so I can bring them in together. But instead it's like, no, let's just not do the first thing at the base of it, the foundation.
Base and the core and the foundation. We are already on the same plane. You just walked over there. I've walked over here. Yeah. You know, but there's no other levels. There's no levels to it, except, again, when we talk about economic status and things like that, then you can level people off, but you can't do it to the entire ethnic group of people. Right. You know what I'm saying?
And those things are man-made issues.
Yeah, that's why I say we're not going to get into the history.
Yeah, like those are man-made issues. Like the God-made issues is we're all one. We're all one human race
in the eyes of God,
made in His image. And this is we talked a little before. We kind of went through a little outline before we started the broadcast. And one of the things that I want to talk about was the concept that the word unity is something that goes all the way back to before the beginning of time, where God is three beings in one. He's the Father, He's the Son, He's the Holy Spirit, but He's one God, right? And so there's unity in there. And there's this devotion that I'm reading, and it talks about excuse me, and I just want to read this idea that, like, yet there are not three separate gods, but only one God. that is the Godhead that is perfectly unified, right? There's three God beings. There's three versions. There are different individualized concepts of God, right? The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And then this is the line that I want to focus on. You see, unity establishes oneness that will not negate individuality, right? And it's like unity is about oneness without losing the things that
makes you an individual,
that do make us different from one person to another, but we're still one, right? We're individuals, and that could come from culture, that could come from your upbringing, that could come from experiences, but it shouldn't come from an outside, I guess, like influence that's pushing that on you based on something that you can't control, like your skin color or even your culture or where you come from.
Right.
And so, because then, I mean, I was like a teenager when someone looked at me and they're like, you know that not all black people are African Americans, right? And they kind of whispered it like that. And I went, yeah. Do you know what I mean? Right. And in my head, I went, wait a second. Like I have for all of my life up to that point, I just put African American equals black, but it was wrong to say black. Because then it was like, oh, you're being racist, right? And then it's only like over the time I've gotten to know people and experienced people, they've been like, nah, I'm from Ireland, man. My family comes from Ireland. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, but you're black. And they're like, yes, like you're right. And so I'm like, oh, and so it's just, there's this natural, like crazy tendency to just, because you think if you say African American, you're being politically correct. You're like, no, I'm not though. Right. Like I'm from Jamaica. Right. Or whatever. And then it was,
I think it might be more racist to say African American.
And and I agree. I definitely agree because you're lumping somebody into a category based on their skin tone. Right.
In order to be an African American, you assume your ancestors were slaves.
Right. Because they were brought over against their will. Right. And forced to do labor on that other men, white men built things on your backs. Yeah. Without paying you, right? Yeah. And so, like to say you're African American is to say, oh, so your ancestors were probably slaves. Yeah. No, I don't know. I've never asked you if you know where you like your ancestors come from.
It's like looking at someone through the lens of I know your history. Right. I know your past. I know who you are. Right. You know what I mean?
What an assumption for a person to make without ever actually knowing.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's arrogance at its worst level, you know? And so we've used the term experience a little bit. And I want to talk about this because I was listening to a sermon by a pastor, and I've used his stuff on the podcast before, and you might be familiar with him. It's Andy Stanley. I don't know if you know who Andy Stanley is. No. Fantastic pastor. He's in Atlanta, Georgia, and he really like he got super vocal after Ahmaud Arbery because like that happened in Georgia, and he's always been like a proponent for anti-racism, but that really kind of triggered something in him where it's like, as a white pastor, I got to say more. Like I need to listen more. I'm going to listen, but like I need to leverage this platform that I have as well to be purposely anti-racist, right? And so he did a sermon just this past Sunday that talked about I think it was titled "This Human Race" or whatever. And he talked about how like facts and figures and like information doesn't change people's minds, right? What changes people's minds is experience, right? And so like you can look at all these facts and figures, you can read all these numbers about cops versus, white people or cops versus black people, and the numbers, you can make numbers do whatever you want, right? But then when you sit down and you talk to and you look into the eyes of a black person or any person of color, you're going to see something different than what facts and figures are going to tell you. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like I was blown away when I heard a story about a black man that I know and respect doesn't drive through certain parts of Poland. Yeah. Because he'll go around it. Because anytime he pulls into the city limits, the first cop he passes pulls out of wherever they're sitting and follows him until he gets out of the city. Yeah. I don't know if he has any sort of history with Poland police. I don't know if he has a record. I don't know those things. I know from my experience that man does not deserve to be followed around. Yeah. He's not a threat to anybody.
There's certain areas.
Do you know what I mean?
That the black community, we know.
You don't go.
You don't go.
Because it's just going to end with you either being followed around.
Yeah. You tell your, little homies. You tell everybody. Yeah.
And that's the experience
Everybody
thing.
knows.
That's the experience
Don't
thing that I'm
drive
talking
through
about.
Poland.
Facts and figures don't tell you that, right? You can look at facts and figures and be like, Poland cops have never had a complaint with a black man. Well, it's probably because they all know don't drive through. Like, you can't just look at the facts and figures.
Or they don't write it up.
Right. Or they don't write it up. See, you get a little side eye, like,
you know, you got that shot.
You got that, right? And because and this kind of stuff is what we need to talk about. Yeah. Like, we have to have this at the forefront, because you can't just look at this national picture and go, okay, so here's the national story. Here's the trend, right? Racism is on the downtrend. Because then you look into the eyes of a black brother or sister and you're like, no, it's hot and bright. Like, the fire is burning just as much as it ever did. And that's something that for me, and the conversations that I want to have with you and with other people on this podcast and in my personal life, is to engage more in this conversation about, like, what can we do, right? So I want to shift focus a little bit, right? Okay. And I want you to start, right, as a black man who's got a wife and one kid with a second on the way, right? You said it in the thing you sent me that I posted. What can, and I'll start by asking, what can your white brothers and sisters do? Right. But I also know, and you've said this a lot, that it's two sides, right? So let's just start by being super practical. Like, what can we do to further the conversation, right? What can we do to take at least a baby step towards making this a thing of the past, right? And again, we're 4 centuries into this, right? But let's just talk right now about some practical things. And then I want to share some of the things that I've kind of been sitting with or whatever. And then we'll kind of bounce that off before we start to,
I think,
start to turn the corner.
First thing first, if you're concerned about how your black or minority brothers and sisters are feeling, I think first things first is get to know a black or minority person.
Right.
You know what I mean? Get to know them by any means. You know, if you're at a restaurant and you have a black waiter, engage them in conversation. Yeah. You know, if you played in a basketball league and you have a black guy that plays on the league, get to know him. Right. Engage in conversation. You know, I think a lot of what people don't know, what you don't know, scares you. Yeah. Right. And so I think a lot of what we see as far as the stigma continuing on, and when it comes to black people who are violent, you know, the propaganda that's put out there, you know, black people are this, black people are that, whatever it may be, you fear what you don't know. Right. And so to get to know a person of color will do way more. It's like what you're saying, that experience will do way more for you than anything. So first thing first, you get to know a black person. Yeah. I mean, it blows my mind that even has to be said, but I mean, you're right. Yeah. I mean, and I'm not just talking about, man, I just want to know what goes on in your life type of deal with racism. You know, I'm just talking about as a person. What are their hopes and dreams? Yeah. You know, as a person, as you would any other person. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I think that would be helpful. I think there's enough, and I agree that experience trumps information, but I think they can go hand in hand too. You know what I mean? I think there's enough information out there that if you really wanted to wake up kind of to what's going on around you in reality,
you just got to read something. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. And I understand the media will flip things, and news articles will flip things. And so you got to be careful what you read. Yeah. And you just kind of got to use common sense, you know what I mean, to weed through bad media or fake news. Right. You know, but there's a lot of information out there. And if you don't have any black people in your proximity, then go online, find somebody talking about some good stuff.
You're chuckling
and just
because
get to know. It's simple things. Just get to know.
Yeah.
I'll say this, and it's more of a cultural difference. It is a cultural difference actually, than it is an ethnic difference. Is what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
Like black people, we have different mannerisms. You know what I mean? For example, I just said, you know what I mean? Like that's
yeah.
We have lingo, we have mannerisms.
Right.
And so once again, you fear what you don't know. If you're walking down the street and there's a black guy, walking, and you're afraid because you don't know the mannerisms of a black person.
Right.
Now you're stuck with fear.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So get to know black people.
Yeah.
I think in this time that we're in this season that we're in, the climate of the world, I think it's good to do things like this. If you're going to be outspoken about things, if you're not such an outspoken person, just continue to work on yourself. Mm-hmm. I'm a big kingdom person.
Right.
Anything I do, I think I even hashtag, bringing the kingdom when I shared your post, because when Jesus showed up on the scene, John was preaching, repent, for the kingdom is at hand.
Yeah.
When Jesus showed up, he said, repent, for the kingdom is here.
Right.
And that word repent, we as believers, we often take that and it's like, oh, stop sinning, right? But that word repent actually means to change your thinking.
Right.
Think another way. Yeah. Have another thought about this.
Right.
About what's going on.
Yeah.
Because why have another thought? Because the kingdom is here.
Right.
And so self-work, the kingdom starts within. And once the kingdom comes from within, then you can now spread the kingdom from without.
Right.
And so self-work, continue to analyze yourself, pray, ask God to reveal anything in you that's not like him, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just continue to do that, because I think at the end of the day, racism is it's a heart issue. It's something that is just a what's the word? It's a symptom. Yeah. It's a symptom of the heart. Right. And so if we get our hearts in order, the symptoms, will fall off. Right.
Yeah. And I think that sometimes we get too caught up trying to put a Band-Aid over things so that way it looks good. Yeah. Right. Like we try to fix the symptoms. Yeah. Because then everybody's comfortable now. Yeah. But the issue's not resolved.
Right. It's like we were talking earlier. If you keep it in the dark,
it's just
going to stay in the dark.
Yeah. Because as soon as you stop treating the symptom or stop talking about the symptom, then it's just going to grow, or there's going to be a new symptom that develops. Right. Because that's just the way viruses work. That's the way evil works. That's just how it goes. Yeah. You said something that, and this is going to sound almost cheesy, but like you said so many things where I'm like, wow, he just said it different than I would have said it, but it's exactly the same idea. And it's this concept of like when Jesus said, or when Jesus said to love each other as I have loved you, like people are going to know you by how you love others. Right. And they're going to know that you received and accepted and had been transformed by my love, by how you love other people. Right. And then if you fast forward into the book of Galatians, you got Paul that's like, one of the best ways to show that you love people and that you have been transformed by the love of Christ is to carry one another's burdens. Yeah. Right. And I love this idea where it's almost like they're just kind of paralleling each other, where Jesus is like, love people. Right. And then Paul's almost like, here's how, like carry their burdens. Yeah. And then they'll know you by your love or whatever. Right. Correct. And so like for me, notice one thing that he doesn't say there is talk a lot about it. Right. Like he says, carry the burden. Yeah. Right. Post about it a lot. Right. No, it says carry the burden. Right. Where it's like, you can't carry a burden from a distance. Yeah. Right. Like you see somebody carrying something that's heavy. It doesn't do anything to go, hey, I'm going to post about how I'm helping you carry that. Yeah. Right. You have to get close to somebody.
Or, hey, I'm going to post about you carrying that.
Yeah, I'm gonna post about you carrying that, and we could talk for hours, and I do want to continue this conversation on a different day because I got all kinds of questions that I want to ask you about, like the specific practical stuff that's happening in culture right now. But I want to like give my like last little ending piece on this idea of like, as a white person and as white people, and especially if you call yourself a Christian, if you are not actively anti-racist, then you have some serious soul searching to do about what it means to be a Christ follower. Because I don't want to like step on anybody here, but Jesus was not white. Like, he was not a white man. He was a Jewish, like Middle Eastern, dark-skinned person, right? If you have a problem with people with different skin tones as a white person, then you have a problem with Jesus.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And if we are not actively anti-racist, where we call out evil when we see it, then we are adding to the problem. And I can't think of any other way to put it. I don't want to try to like tippy-toe around it.
Yeah.
If we're going to carry each other's burdens and we're going to be known by our love, then we have to get close to the people who are in this struggle, that are being affected. And not so. And then this is where, as a white person, for me, it starts to like toe the line of like, be careful. Like, not for the purpose of saying, look how anti-racist I am. Right. But because we want to be known by our love. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Is it making sense?
Oh yeah. It's doing it.
You got to do it. You have to do something, right?
Don't talk about it, be about it.
And yeah, right. And so what I'd like to do too, and we usually wrap these things up within about an hour. We're kind of pushing the thing here, and Brandon's giving me the keep going. And I told you we'd go about an hour, and we started a few minutes late. So we will turn the corner here to wrap up in just a minute. But I want to just finish this thought about the experience thing and then the carry each other's burdens, because if I don't know you, then I don't know what your burdens are. Mm-hmm. And if I don't take the time to learn you as a person, what your heart is, where your heart's coming from, then there's no way I can carry your burdens. And you can't carry mine, right? And if we were to just stop and to bring this thing full circle, in the same way that Jesus stopped at the tomb of Lazarus and just wept, he just cried. He said, I'm going to feel it. I'm going to be with it. He, in that moment, put the burdens of Lazarus's family on his chest and felt it. Yeah. And
before he could even do that, he had to walk to where they were.
He had to show up. Right. Yeah. And so like, maybe we just need to take a step back and just show up, right? Show up. Let's just show up. Let's just be present as white people, as people. And and again, I can't challenge this enough. If you say, oh, I'm not racist, then that's my first red flag that you like might need to look in the mirror, like, because I want to, when somebody goes and looks at me and if my first defense is no, I'm not racist, then it's immediately about me. And I've already lost the focus, because it's not about Jesus, right? In that moment, it's about people making sure that they know, me making sure that I know that they know I'm not racist. Yeah. And so, but if we're going to love each other and we're going to love Jesus, then we have to carry each other's burdens. And so I would love to have you back on soon. We could talk about this more after we wrap. But I did want to give the last couple of minutes. Is there anything that's like the conversation has like sparked something different or new, or you got something stirring up that you'd like to share?
No, I think you said some pretty good things. I think in this time, I would just want to stress for people to be sensitive towards one another. This is not just me talking to white people towards black people, but this is black people towards white people as well. They're trying to grow with us, you know what I mean? And so they're trying to get into the fight with us. And so let's be sensitive to one another. I think I can speak for all black people and be confident saying that we're at the point where we're just like tired. Yeah. The conversation is tiring, honestly. Because it's imagine having to explain something to someone for 400 years.
Yeah. You're not wrong.
You know what I mean?
And that's on my mind all the time.
Yeah.
That why haven't we listened? Right.
Yeah.
And like, of course there's anger, you know, and it's killing me. It's killing me. I wish that it wasn't so.
Yeah.
So, but I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I can't, and I said this to you on the phone, I can't empathize with like your experiences. When I say that, I mean, if I even try to put myself in your shoes, all that I've got is what you tell me, right? Mm-hmm. Because I've never had somebody look at me and tighten up when I pull up next to them, mm-hmm. right? I've never had somebody take the other side of the aisle at the grocery store. This never happened to me. And maybe, and I've been in, there was one time I was in the downtown Atlanta, Georgia, and I asked the guy for directions, right? And I had somebody on the phone with me, and this guy was showing me where to go, and the person on the phone was like, "Get away from that guy," you know? Like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm asking a guy for directions. Like, he lives here," right? He eventually was like, walked me to where I was going, and then almost basically demanded that I pay him for him helping me out. And I was like, "No, bro, like, no." Yeah. But I mean, so maybe whatever. But there was this immediate where it was like, "Oh my gosh, it's a person in downtown Atlanta. They got something. You're in trouble now." I'm like, "Well, I mean, that wasn't mine. I needed to get somewhere. This guy lives here. I'm going to ask him." Right. And so there's just this idea that we have to like start where we don't know. Right. And so in that, as we educate ourselves, I don't want to overwhelm our black brothers and sisters with like, "Tell me everything about racism. Like, what's your experience?" Because that is exhausting. That doesn't serve anybody. So I think we should just start and just show up. You know, just show up. Just shoulder something. Put something on your shoulders. Carry something.
I think you can carry burdens, and I love the story of Jesus and Lazarus, because he didn't need to ask many questions. Yeah. You know, well, how did he die? You know,
right?
And when was it? And well, what was he feeling while he was going? He didn't ask many questions, you know. Mm-hmm. He just felt it.
Right. He showed up.
What I'm saying,
he felt it, and then he acted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think I'm not saying don't ask if you're inquiring. I'm just saying be sensitive to one another.
For sure.
Be sensitive when they ask us, because they're trying to learn. They're trying to walk with us, grow with us.
Yeah.
And be sensitive when we respond. Yeah. You know, and because we won't, I'll say this and I'll be done. It might not, especially in this moment, come off super easy and gentle. Yeah. You know, I'm a very laid back person. Right. Very chill, gentle. But it might not come off that way, especially in this right. time. Yeah. So just be cautious of that.
No, and that's a good point, because it is exhausting. Yeah. I've been having this conversation daily for a couple of weeks now, and I can't even begin to fathom what it's like to just be a fabric thread of every single day. Mm. You know what I mean? I just can't even put myself where it's like, man, this is every day for some people. And so let me say this, and I'll be done. If there's like a protest, or there's some sort of like movement that's in your area where you could like serve, right? Like do something, right? I'm not saying like, we're not going to get into like some of the extracurricular stuff that's come with some of that right now. That's for a different conversation. But like, stuff doesn't happen unless people do something, and we have to like support each other, right? Like you said, if somebody's asking a question to a black person, answer with grace and sensitivity. And we as white people need to stop saying like, "Oh, here we come with this savior complex," right? Like, let me ask you a bunch of questions, because then we're going to fix it, right? Put a Band-Aid on and be like, 400 years, we're all good. That's just not the way it works. Like, this is a very like generation after generation journey that we're like on. Oh yeah. And people are jumping in halfway through, 200 years through, 400 years through. Like, it's just, there's different levels of it. And so we just need to walk. We just need to keep walking. We need to keep locking arms. And then every now and then talk about each other's kids instead. like get to know somebody, like
live
life with them. Yeah. And so with that, I want to say thanks for taking some time.
For sure, man. Anytime.
And I appreciate it. And we'll have more conversations about this. We're going to continue to do this. I feel like Brandon, this live thing worked once we got the first little kinks worked out. So we're going to keep doing this. Next time or in the future, you asked me this before we started, we're going to offer like Q&A. Like we're going to have like a comment section. You can like ask questions or leave comments, and we'll try to like banter back and forth and give some feedback and stuff. And not every single one of these is going to be so like heavy, you know, but they are going to be practical. They are going to be real. And so, again, man, thanks so much. We're going to wrap up, and we're going to call it episode 8 of the Safehouse Podcast. Tre, I'm Andy. Brandon is over behind the computers. Did a good job today, man. Your mic might be off. I caught him off guard. And so
you did catch me off guard.
I did. So thank you so much, guys. And we'll see you next week. We're going to be back with episode 9 next week. More conversations like this. We're going to be doing some other cool stuff. So we'll see you guys soon. Thanks again.